Nitil Pavishtam Vishnupad Ashatarashatashmar Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj Shri Gurudev Ki Jai. Nitil Pavishtam Vishnupad Ashatarashatashmar Shri Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nitil Pavishtam Vishnupad Ashatarashatashmar Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Nitil Pavishtam Ashatarashatashmar Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nitya Lila Pravishta Maha Bhagavat Shila Gorksharas Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Nitya Lila Pravishta Shila Satchidaranda Bhakti Vinod Ṭhākura Ki Jai. Nitya Lila Pravishta Vaishnav Sarvabhauma Shila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Shri Rupanu Gauriya Guru Varga Ki Jai. Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jeev Gopal Bhatta Dashagunath Sharda Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai. Shri Sarup Damodar Rai Ramanandari Shri Gaur Parshad Vrinda Ki Jai. Naam Achay Shlahaidas Ṭhākura Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Kshetra Mandala Gaura Mandala Vraja Mandala Mathura Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Sarva Abhishta Pradata Giriraj Maharaj Ki Jai. Shri Radha Kunda Shama Kunda Ki Jai. Shri Muna Devi Ganga Devi Ki Jai. Shri Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai. Shri Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Shri Purnamasi Yogamaya Ki Jai. Shri Gopeshwar Mahadev Ki Jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Grantaraj Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Ki Jai. Shri Sārārtha-darśinī Vritti Ki Jai. Shri Viśvanātha Cakravartī Ṭhākura Ki Jai. Shri Rasa Panchadhyaya Ki Jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Radhikaya Priyatmane Shri Śrīmad Bhakti Vedanta Narayaniti Namine. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanang Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauratvishe Namaha. Gurave Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Tadalaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tarbhaktaya Namo Namaha. Yam prabrajantamanopetamapeta krityam dvaipayano virahakatara ajuhava putreti tanmayataya tarabobhinedustam sarvabhuta hridaya munimanatosmi narayanam namaskritya narang chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayamudirayet. Shrinvatang Swakatha Krishna Punyashana Kirtana Radantasto Yabhadrani Vidhunuti Suritsatam Nashta Prayesh Pabadreshu Nityang Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki Tavai Vasmi Na Jivami Tvaya Vina Iti Vigyaya Radhe Tvang Nayamam Charanantikam Bhaktya Vihina Aparada Lakshaya Kshiptastakama Ditaranga Madhe Kripa Maitvam Sharanam Prapana Vrinde Namaste Charanaravindam Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Dandavat pranams Gargaraj ji, Indira Mataji, Raseshwari Mataji, Champak Didi, Sudevi Didi, Madhavi Didi, Prajumna Prabhu, and Mantra Murti Mataji. Dandavat pranams to everybody here. So yesterday, Indira Mataji gave me some very good suggestions of things to read in preparation of this. I've been so busy yesterday and had a late morning this morning, so I don't have anything ready yet. Maybe tomorrow I can read. But Dandavat pranams Ganga Didi. But for now, we're just going to jump straight into it. I'll read the verses that we went over yesterday. Let's see, chapter 29. Okay. So, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam said, Shri Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, full in all opulences. Yet, upon seeing those autumn nights scented with blossoming jasmine flowers, he turned his mood toward loving affairs. To fulfill his purposes, he employed his internal potency. The moon then rose, anointing the face of the eastern horizon with the reddish hue of his comforting rays. One thing, anyways, this is something that Indira Mataji and I were speaking about. In her book, it says tell me if I'm getting this right, but it says anointing the face of the western horizon with the reddish hue of his comforting rays. Right? Anyways, and thus, which kind of makes sense because the moon would rise on the east and then the sun sets on the west. But anyhow, the moon was like a beloved husband who returns after a long absence and adorns the face of his beloved with red kumkum. But let's see, it must say the word synonyms. Let's look at the synonyms. Sorry, guys, I'm getting distracted. Yeah, it just says horizon. It doesn't say which horizon. Lord Krishna saw the unbroken disk of the full moon glowing with the red effulgence of newly applied vermilion, as if it were the face of the goddess of fortune. He also saw the Kumuda lotuses opening in response to the moon's presence, and the forest gently illumined by its rays. Thus the Lord began to play sweetly on his flute, attracting the minds of the beautiful-eyed gopis. When the young women of Vrindavan heard Krishna's flute song, which arouses romantic feelings, their minds were captivated by the Lord. They went to where their lover waited, each unknown to the others, moving so quickly that their earrings swung back and forth. Some of the gopis were milking cows when they heard Krishna's flute. They stopped milking and went off to meet him. Some left milk curdling on the stove, and others left cakes burning in the oven. Some of them were getting dressed, feeding milk to their infants, or rendering personal service to their husbands. But they gave up all these duties and went to meet Krishna. Other gopis were taking their evening meals, washing themselves, putting on cosmetics, or applying kajal to their eyes. But all the gopis stopped these activities at once, and, though their clothes and were in complete disarray, rushed off to Krishna. Their husbands, fathers, brothers, and other relatives tried to stop, but Krishna had already stolen their hearts. Enchanted by the sound of his flute, they refused to turn back. Some of the gopis, however, could not manage to get out of their houses, and instead remained home with eyes closed, meditating upon him in pure love. So that's where we read up to yesterday. And today we're reading up to verse 17. We're reading up to the point just before we're reading up to the point just before Krishna starts speaking to the gopis. That's where we'll stop right before Krishna starts speaking. Haribo, Nri Hari Prabhu, and if Bhavatarani Mataji is watching, Dandavat pranams to you also. Yeah, see, it says Western in her book. So, because, yes. Okay. So now let's turn back to the book. Oh, God. I've been having, for some reason, this Kindle app doesn't work well on new Macs or something. I don't know what it is. It always shuts down though. There, okay. Now let's open up the table of contents. Sorry guys, I used this yesterday. We're trying to find what version. Okay. There's 10. There it is. Okay. Dusaha prashtaviraha Tivratapaduta Shubha Dhyana Prapta Chutashlesha Nirvritya Kshina Mangala Tam Eva Paramatmanam Jara Buddhyapi Sangata Jahur Gunamayam Deham Sadhya Prakshina Bandhana. For those gopis who could not go to see Krishna, intolerable separation from their beloved caused an intense agony that burned away all impious karma. By meditating upon him, they realized his embrace, and the ecstasy they then felt exhausted all their material piety. Although Lord Krishna is the Supreme Soul, these girls simply thought of him as their male lover and associated with him in that intimate mood. Thus, their karmic bondage was nullified, and they abandoned their gross material bodies. Okay. Sārārtha-darśinī commentary by Śrīla Viśvanātha Cakravartī Ṭhākura. In order to hide the intimate attainment of the gopis, is this fan too loud? Let me know, because I can shut off this one fan if it is too loud. The other fan's not so loud. In order to hide the intimate attainment of the gopis from the gross materialists, Shukadeva Goswami presents an external meaning in this verse, while at the same time he reveals the internal meaning to the confidential devotees well versed in the scientific conclusions of devotions. It should have been a comma, right? From this verse, the materialists can understand that Krishna gave the gopis liberation. All inauspicious things were removed from the gopis' hearts by enduring the suffering of intense separation from Krishna. And all their auspicious karmic reactions were removed by their blissfully embracing Krishna in meditation. Having thus destroyed all their prarabdha karma, the gopis thought of Krishna as their paramour, attains the Paramatma and gave up their bodies. Prarabdha karma is the karma that somebody's undergoing right now in this material world, like your fructified karma. Krishna's devotees, however, understands the verse from the following internal perspective. By meditation on Krishna, the gopis experienced both meeting and separation, unlimited happiness and distress, and at last attained their desire. The intense pain caused by intolerable separation from Krishna removed all the inauspicious things from within the gopis. Seeing the intense agony the gopis endured due to separation from Krishna, thousands of inauspicious things even as fearsome as the subterranean fires of millions of universes, or the powerful Kalakuta poison swallowed by Lord Shiva, gave up their identity as torturous elements, being defeated by the pain experienced by the gopis, and began to tremble. Whoa, that is dramatic. The subterranean fires of millions of universes and the Kalakuta poison that nobody could, that caused, you know that part of, we remember that part of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Those most fearsome, torturous elements possible, they began to tremble. That is. When the gopis meditated on Krishna, he manifested personally before them. Now endowed with the appropriate identity and mood, the gopis experienced infinite bliss by embracing the astonishing transcendental body of Achyuta, which was full of transcendental love for them. That joy made all their good fortune, both material and spiritual, seem insignificant. In other words, seeing the extreme bliss generated in the gopis by embracing Krishna through meditation, all the sensual pleasures found in millions of universes, and even the supersensory pleasure of spiritual bliss, Brahmananda, became withered, inferior, and insignificant. To say that because sin, and piety, punya, can only be destroyed by experiencing pain and pleasure, the gopis' pap and punya were destroyed by the distress and joy arising from their separation and union with Krishna. So to say that their papa and punya were destroyed by the distress and joy arising from their separation and union with Krishna is not acceptable to the Vaishnavas, because separation from Krishna is not caused by sin, and meeting with Krishna is not caused by piety. Thus, the first meaning of the verse is rejected. According to authorities, the destruction of karmic reactions occurs during the stage of bhajan when a devotee reaches the level of anartha-nivritti. The word paramatmanam here means he who possesses the highest, the parama prem. The gopis directly achieved the supreme goal of prem by thinking of Krishna as their illicit lover. The gopis realized Krishna in an even fuller sense than did Rukmini and his other queens, who thought of him most respectfully as their husband. An unpredictable excellence of prem is manifest by thinking of Krishna as a paramour instead of a husband. This is shown in the words of Uddhav, Yadustyajam sajanam aryam patam chahitva. Though the gopis abandoned their families and the path of proper conduct, which is very difficult to do, they worshipped Krishna, who is sought by the Vedas. That's 10th canto, 47th chapter, verse 61. In Krishna's pastimes on earth, he often turns the most lowly things into the most elevated. As Bhishma stated, Krishna's pastime of acting as Arjuna's chariot driver was even more elevated than the pastimes in which he acted as a mighty king of kings. Vijaya Ratha Kutumba Atta Totre Drita Haya Rashmini Tachriye Kshaniye Kshaniye. Wow, that's a really interesting word. I concentrate upon the chariot driver of Arjuna, who stood with a whip in his right hand and a bridle rope in his left, and who very carefully protected Arjuna's chariot by all means. At Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam 1.939. Similarly, in Krishna's Vraja-lila, we see that the normally inferior Shringar Ras, conjugal love, becomes better than the normally superior mood of Shantaras, the passive adoration. And in Shringar Ras, the social unacceptable attitude of loving a paramour becomes superior to the loving exchange between legitimate spouses. In the same way, Krishna's decorations of lowly gunjaberry necklaces, red oxide paste, and peacock feathers are superior to the most valuable jeweled ornaments. The word Sangata, directly meeting with Krishna, implies that some of those gopis who were restrained by their husbands or fathers eventually escaped and met Krishna on the night of the rasa dance, or that some of them were able to meet Krishna on another night. It may be objected, however, that it is not proper for the Supreme Lord to sport with women whose bodies have already been enjoyed by other men. This objection is replied to by the words beginning Jahu, gave up. The word deham, body, is used here in the singular form to indicate unity of category, even though the gopis are many. Some authorities say that by the power of Yogamaya, the gopis' bodies disappeared in a way no one noticed. Others say that the body referred to in this context is the inferior body composed of the modes of material nature. Thus, by the prominence of the adjective gunamayam, it is understood that before the gopis heard the sound of Krishna's flute, their bodies have been twofold, material and spiritual, and upon hearing the flute, they gave up the material bodies which their husbands had enjoyed. In this regard, the following should be considered. When devotees practice devotional service under the shelter of a bona fide spiritual master, they engage their ears and other senses in acts of pure devotion by hearing and chanting about Krishna, remembering him, offering obeisances, and personally serving his deity form. Thus, the devotees make the Lord's transcendental qualities the objects of their senses, as stated by the Lord himself, Nirguno Mad Apashaya. Sorry. The devotees who take shelter of Krishna transcend the material modes. At Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam 11:25-26. Yet sometimes the devotees may take as their sense objects mundane sounds and tastes, and that is material. Thus, a devotee's body can have two aspects, transcendental, nirguna, and material, gunamayam. According to one's level of devotional service, to that degree, the transcendental aspects of one's body becomes prominent and the material aspects diminish. This transformation is described in the following verse from the Bhagavatam 11:2-42. Bhakti pareshanu bhavo viraktir anyatra chaishatrika ekakalaha prapadyamanasya yatashnatashyus tushti pushtikshur apayonughasam. With each bite of food that a person takes, three effects occur simultaneously. He obtains satisfaction, nourishment, and cessation of hunger. Similarly, surrendered souls engaged in bhajan simultaneously experience three effects: the awakening of bhakti aiming at prem, direct manifestation of the Lord's beloved form, and detachment from material objects. Thus, those who eat only a little food will derive a little satisfaction, a little nourishment, and a slight relief from hunger. One second. Similarly, those who perform only a little hearing and chanting about Krishna will attain a little bhakti, some realization of the Lord, and a little detachment. However, when one achieves unalloyed Krishna prem, the material portions of the body disappear and the body becomes completely spiritualized. Nonetheless, so as to not disturb the false opinions of atheists and to protect the confidentiality of devotional service, Krishna usually has his illusory energy exhibits the demise of the gross body. An example of this is the disappearance of the Yadavs during the Moshala Lila. Sometimes, however, to proclaim the superiority of bhakti, there is no death, as in the case of a devotee like Dhruva Maharaj, who Krishna allowed to go to the spiritual world in his self-same body. We can cite evidence for this point from the 25th chapter of the 11th canto, text 32. Yene me nirjita somya guna jivena chittaja bhakti yogena manishto madbhavaya prapadyate. By practicing bhakti yoga, a devotee conquers over the gunas in the heart, over the material modes in the heart, and being my nirguna bhakta, my unalloyed devotee, he attains a form or mood like mine. Kapila Dev also speaks of the transcendental nature of bhakti. As bhakti is transcendental, the ingredients of worship, such as flowers, incense, and ghee, also become transcendental by the touch of the limbs of bhakti. Thus, the defeat and destruction of that which is composed of the modes of material nature can be brought about only by the process of devotional service. The word duta shubha can also mean, by the pain caused by intolerable separation from Krishna, the gopis cast off their gunamayam deham, their inauspicious material bodies. By the ecstasy the gopis felt by embracing Krishna and meditation, their auspicious spiritual bodies, far from being destroyed, simply increased and became more prominent because of bliss. Yogamaya helped the gopis get free from the restraints of their husbands and from the bondage of ignorance, because all their karma was completely destroyed. However, we should not make the mistake of thinking that the gopis died. As the Lord himself states, Ya maya kridata ratram vanesmin vraja astita alabdha rasakalyanyo mapur mad viryachintaya. All those auspicious gopis who were locked in their houses by their husbands and could not attend the Raslila on the full moon night of autumn attained me by remembering my potent pastimes. That's in chapter 47, verse 37 of the 10th canto. By using the word kalyanya in this verse, Krishna implies, even though these gopis wanted to give up their bodies because of their husbands' prohibitions and the torment of separation from me, for them to die at the beginning of the most auspicious festival of the Ras dance would have been displeasing to me and thus inauspicious. Therefore, they did not die. Rather, they became fortunate. More evidence that the gopis who were prevented from going to see Krishna did not physically die is provided in Sri Shukadev's by Sri Shukadev Goswami later in this canto, in chapter 47, verse 38. Ta uchur udavam pritas tat sandesha gata smritihi. Then the gopis replied to Uddhav, feeling satisfied because his message had reminded them of Krishna. The word ta here refers to those gopis restrained from the Ras Lila by their husbands. Yet they remained alive and were now present speaking with Uddhav while Krishna was living in Mathura. In other words, the gopis gave up their gunamaya bodies without dying. Parched by the intense heat of separation, the gopis gave up the gunamaya nature of their bodies and attained pure spiritual bodies, just like the bodies of such great devotees as Dhruva Maharaj. This is the meaning of the gopis giving up their bodies. One second, I just want to check the comments. Okay, great, you don't hear the fan. Dandavat pranams Yashoda Didi. Verse 10 and several others in the Bhagavatam indicates that the gopis remained home without dying and only attained Krishna's association in meditation. Dhyana prapta achyuta ashlesha. By meditation, the gopis obtained the embrace of Achyuta Krishna. That's from chapter, that's this chapter. Alabdha vinir, that's this verse actually that we're on. And then alabdha vinir gama, not obtaining any exit. That's the previous verse. Raje astita, remaining in the village of Raj, 47, chapter 47, verse 37. And ma apu mat virya chintaya. The gopis achieved me by meditation upon my valorous pastimes. That's chapter 47, verse 37 again. So that all these verses are proof that the gopis remained home without dying and attained Krishna's association in meditation. Okay. However, here verse 11 says, Sangata. The gopis got Krishna's direct association. Whereas Bhagavatam 10:47-37 says, Alabdha rasaha. The gopis did not attain the rasa dance. Therefore, it should be understood that among the gopis who were locked in their houses, there were two types. The following analogy illustrates the statuses of the various gopis. By observing 7 or 8 ripe mangoes on a tree, a wise servant can ascertain that all the fruits on the tree are ripe. Then he'll pick them and also bring them home, where in due course the sun's rays and other agents will make them fine-looking, fragrant, and delicious, fit to be offered to the king for his enjoyment. When the time comes for the king to take his meal, a discriminating servant can choose those fruits ready to offer him. From the appearance of the fruits, the servant can tell which are ripe in the middle, but still raw on the outside, and thus not yet fit for the king. After 2 or 3 days, the remaining fruits will become ripe, and they too will be ready to offer to the king. Similarly, among the Munichari gopis who took birth in Gokul, those who had completely given up their gunamaya bodies and very early in life achieved purely spiritual bodies were able to remain untouched by any other man. Thus, Yogamaya allowed them to join the Nitya Siddha and other advanced gopis when they went to meet Krishna. Other Munichari gopis still retained some connection with the external material body, but even they, after experiencing the pain of separation from Sri Krishna, gave up the conception of their material bodies and assumed perfectly transcendental bodies, purified of all taint of contact with other men. On the night of the rasa dance, Yogamaya sent some of these gopis out behind. On the night of the rasa dance, Yogamaya sent some of these gopis out behind those who had already gone out. Others, who Yogamaya saw still had a slight amount of contamination, she kept back to further purify with the heat of separation, and then she sent them out on some other night. After enjoying the pleasure of the ras dance and other pastimes with Krishna, the Munichari gopis who had participated went back to their homes when the night was over, as did the Nitya Siddha and other advanced gopis. Now Yogamaya protected these Munichari gopis from the material association of their husbands. In other words, these gopis became detached from their husbands, sons, and daughters, and their love for Krishna increased more and more. Since these gopis were thoroughly immersed in the great ocean of love for Krishna, their breasts dried up so that they could not feed their infants. Becoming disinterested in raising their children, their family members thought that they were possessed by ghosts. In conclusion, it is not unseemly that the gopis who were previously in material association joined in the ras dance. Some acharyas conclude that the gopis locked in their homes did not have children. According to them, whenever such words as apatya, children, are used in verses yet to come, these words refer to the children of co-wives, to adopted children or nephews and nieces. Okay. Verse 12. Shri Parikshit Uvacha. Krishnam vidu param kantam natu brahmataya mune guna pravaho paramas tasam guna dhyam katham. Shri Parikshit Maharaj said, O sage, the gopis knew Krishna as their lover. Sorry. O sage, the gopis knew Krishna only as their lover, not as the supreme absolute truth. So how could these girls, their minds caught up in the waves of the modes of nature, free themselves from material attachment? Commentary. Though Parikshit Maharaj understood the meaning of Shukadev Goswami's words, he noticed the expressions on the faces of some of the more materialistic persons present there and realized the doubt lurking in their hearts. To remove their doubts, he asked this question: O sage, O knower of everything, although Krishna is a supreme personality, the gopis knew Krishna only as their lover. How did the gopis become free from the modes of nature by thinking, let us enjoy with Krishna? Shukadev Goswami answered, the Shastras explain that only knowledge of the Supersoul can award liberation. Tam eva viditvati mrityum eti nanyapanta vidyate yannaya. One can attain the perfect stage of liberation from birth and death simply by knowing the Supreme Lord, and there is no other way to achieve this perfection. Okay. Sorry. I needed to write that down before I forgot. Let me reread that. Sorry. The Shastras explain that only knowledge of the Supersoul can award liberation. And then there's that verse. One can attain the perfect stage of liberation from birth and death simply by knowing the Supreme Lord, and there's no other way to achieve this perfection. Shvetashvatara Upanishad 3:8. Also, Swatmanam Atmatmaya Vikshate. Atmatmaya. Atmatmataya Vikshate. Sorry. The individual soul can only realize the Supreme Soul when he recognizes his transcendental position. That's from Brahma's prayers, 14:24. Okay, so now let's hear Shukadev Goswami's response now. Shishuka Uvacha Uktam Purastarit Chaidya Siddhim Yatagata Dvishan Api Hrishikesham Kim Uta Dhokshaja Priya. Shukadev Goswami said, this point was explained to you previously. Since even Shishupal, who had hated Krishna, achieves perfection, then what to speak of the Lord's dear devotees? Commentary. Though the king of sages knew this was not Parikshit's question, he made a pretense of scolding him in order to chastise others for their foolishness. Shukadev Goswami said, you must have no intelligence at all to be asking such a question. Previously, in the 7th canto, I told you that Shishupal attains liberation though he hated the Lord. If he could attain Sayuja Mukti with that unfavorable attitude, what can we say of the gopis' favorable attitude, characterized by conjugal desire? The word Hrishikesham indicates that Krishna personally descends to this world by his unconditional causeless mercy. Even though Krishna is inaccessible to the senses of such persons such as Brahma, nevertheless, he makes himself visible by his inconceivable divine potency and allows himself to be seen by the senses of even the lowest of men. Not to the highest of men, Brahma, but he makes it possible to the lowest of men. Krishna does this to deliver them and thus exhibit the power of his compassion. These gopis, on the other hand, are the objects and subjects of affection for Adhokshaj Krishna, the transcendental Lord who lies beyond the purview of ordinary senses. Why did Shukadev reject the recent example of Aghasura achieving perfection in Vrindavan, and instead cite an example from Krishna's Mathura Lila concerning the most degraded Chaitya? By citing Shishupal, Chediraj, Shukadev Goswami reveals a confidential truth to King Parikshit. Just as the gopis who were kept in their houses eventually attained spiritual bodies, similarly, Shishupal assumed his eternal spiritual body as an associate of the Lord at the removal of his gunamaya, his material body attained by a sage's curse because of his extreme materialistic illusion. That's so interesting. Shivas and I were just discussing Shishupal yesterday. About Shishupal. Anyways, in reality, Shishupal's spiritual body as a personal associate of the Lord was always present, hidden within. I need to list the Shivas. How come it's not going to the next page there? So his spiritual body was hidden within. It is stated in the Bhagavatam 7:146, Krishna chakra hata anghaso. By the chakra of Krishna, the sins of Dantavakra and Shishupal were removed. In other words, the chakra removed their sins rather than killing them, and then they attained the perfection of returning to their positions as attendants of Lord in Vaikuntha. Okay. How come it didn't? That's so annoying. Anyhow, I'll come back to this and copy it. What's going on? There, I'll come back to this later. Sorry, guys. This thing is... Okay. Where were we? What happened? I'm so sorry, guys. This just took me to the beginning of the book. Let me go back to the notes. There. Okay, now I'm back. Okay, so in reality, Shishupal's spiritual body as a personal associate of the Lord was always present, hidden within. Okay. And this is stated in the Bhagavatam. There. Okay, sorry, guys. This is also stated in reference to Jaya and Vijay, who appeared as Shishupal and Dantavakra in Krishna's pastimes. Vairano bandati vrena dhyanena chutasatmatam nito punar hare parshvam jagmatur Vishnu parshado. These two associates of Lord Vishnu, Jaya and Vijay, maintained a feeling of enmity for Krishna for a very long time. This is because of always thinking of Krishna in this way, they regained the shelter of the Lord, having returned home back to Godhead. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam 7:147. Okay, verse 14. Sorry about all that. Nrinam nisheya sarthaya vyaktir bhagavato nripa avyayas ya prameyasya nirgunasya gunatmana. O King, the Supreme Lord is inexhaustible and immeasurable, and he is untouched by the material modes because he is their controller. His personal appearance in this world is meant for bestowing the highest benefit on humanity. Commentary. Shri Krishna descends to the material world to show mercy to the devotees and demons alike. Krishna appears here with this idea in his mind. I shall deliver all those persons who have even a little personal connection with me, even though they have not embarked on any path of spiritual advancement. This point is explained in verses 14 to 15. Krishna comes to bestow the highest benefit, which for some means merging into God's existence, or liberation to Vaikuntha, or pure love of God. That's Sayuja Mukti, Salokya Mukti, or Prem Bhakti. Krishna does not have to personally appear to kill an insignificant demon like Kamsa, since by the mere movement of his eyebrows, he can destroy millions of universes. Krishna is called Avyayasya, inexhaustible, because though he gives himself to each and every devotee, he is never depleted. But in what way is Krishna so? Someone may ask. The answer is given beginning with the word aprameyasya, which means immeasurable. Krishna is immeasurable because he is untouched by material qualities and filled with unlimited transcendental qualities. Verse 15. Kamam krodam bhayam sneham aikyam sohridamevacha nityang haro vidadhato yanti tan mayatam hite. Persons who constantly direct their lust, anger, fear, protective affection, feeling of impersonal oneness, or friendship toward Lord Hari are sure to become absorbed in thought of him. Commentary. In this verse, Shukadeva Goswami says, therefore, Parikshit, you should understand the conclusion clearly. The Vraj Gopis and others worshipped Krishna with a mood of lust, kam. Shishupal worshipped Krishna with a mood of anger, krodha. Kamsa, a mood of fear, bhayam. Nanda Maharaj, a mood of parental love, sneha. The self-satisfied stages, a mood of oneness, aikya. The Vrishnis, Pandavas, and others, a mood of friendship, sohridam. In whichever mood they worshipped Sri Krishna, they realized the respective eternal pastimes, tan mayatam, of the Lord. This tells us that the various pastimes of all these persons are eternal. Even today, anyone who maintains any of these individual moods towards Krishna will achieve him. Just as one attached to women is called Stri Maya, the gopis are called Tanmaya, which means totally absorbed in Krishna. For the words Tanmayatam mean Sayuja. For others, the words Tanmayatam means Sayuja, merging in the Brahmajyoti. Na chaivang vismaya karyo bhavata bhagavataje yogeshwareshware krishne yatta etar vimuchyate. You should not be so astonished by Krishna, the unborn master of all masters of mystic power, the supreme personality of Godhead. After all, it is the Lord who liberates this world. Commentary. Shukadeva Goswami said, though others may be amazed, it should not be astonishing for you who have been well aware of Krishna's glories within your mother's womb. Though Krishna appears as a cowherd boy, he is Bhagavan. Though Krishna is the son of Devaki, he is unborn. Though Krishna flirts with the damsels of Vraj, he is the ultimate master of all masters of mystic yoga and the original source of all incarnations. It is not astonishing that Krishna liberates all the moving and non-moving creatures in the entire universe, as explained in Sridhar Swami's commentary. Etad vimuchyate can also mean that although this universe is distinct from the transcendental paraphernalia of Krishna's pastimes, still, by remembering the moods of Kam and Sneha of Krishna's various devotees, even today, anyone in the universe can become freed from the flux of the modes of material nature. verse 17. Okay, so we're ending with this verse. Tadrishtvantikamāyata Bhagavan Vrajayoshita Avadad Vadatang Shreshto Vacha Peshar Vimohayan. Seeing that the girls of Vraj had arrived, Lord Krishna, the best of speakers, greeted them with charming words that bewildered their minds. Commentary. Okay, cool. Having thus reconciled an apparent contradiction by establishing the spiritual nature of the gopis' love for Krishna, Shukadev Goswami proceeds with his narration. Even though the gopis, were already bewildered by the resonant sounds of his flute, Krishna, who is the most expert user of speech in regards to proper time, place, and person, bewildered the gopis even more by his use of words. Peshar means with limbs, or different aspects of fine speech, including expressions designating that which is named, referenced, or indirectly implied, with aspects that are varyingly dry, harsh, and moist, affectionate. Krishna is going to fulfill 3 of his desires by speaking harsh words to the gopis. Krishna thinks, first of all, I want to show the world the purity of the gopis' love. Even when the gopis see that I, the beloved object of their affection, am indifferent, still their affection does not decrease the slightest bit. When I meet with the gopis, I will act in a contrary way. I will take up the role of the proud, headstrong lover, Vamyabhav, which is usually reserved for the woman in Shringaras. I will make them take up the role of the eager, submissive man, Dakshina Bhav. Further, because of the natural stiffness of the young girls who are extremely shy, which makes them act just the opposite of how they actually feel, the gopis are surely going to make me listen to their interjected words meant to forestall our association. Although, as it is understood by experts in the science of rasas, in the same way as the breasts and other bodily parts of attractive women make a more striking impression by being hidden under clothing, similarly, the inner hankerings of such women inspire more wonder when they are kept covered by their contrary behavior. When these are brashly exhibited, they do not create the same effect. Nonetheless, the male lover sometimes desires to see the uncovered limbs of a woman he is trying to enjoy. Especially, he may wish to hear her words of eagerness, which are usually hidden by external pride. But he never wants to see or hear these things in front of even his intimate friends, what to speak of others. In this way, Sri Krishna now wishes to see all the hidden bodily features of the beautiful young gopis, and to hear their intimate words without the covering of duplicity. Thus, we can understand that Krishna was not in association of his cowherd friends at that time. So tomorrow we will begin from verse 18. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. Lord Krishna said, O most fortunate ladies, welcome. What may I do to please you? Is everything well in Vraj? Please tell me the reason of your coming here. So we will begin with that tomorrow. Oh, and we ended just on time. It's 8:29. Perfect. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Haribo, Nitai Gaur, Haribo, Nitai Gaur, Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaur, Haribo. Radhe Radhe Gopi Kanta Prabhu and Shash Sharmaji, Hare Krishna. Jai Shishi Guru Gauranga Gandhar Vikagiri Dhari Shishi Radha Vinod Bihari Ju ki jai. Shri Govinda Gopinath Maran Mohan Ju ki jai. Nityal Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashtatara Shata Shishimar Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj Shila Guru Dev ki jai. Nityalila Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashtatara Shata Shishimar Bhakti Vedanta Vaman Goswami Maharaj ki jai. Nityalila Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashtatara Shata Shishimar Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Shila Prabhupada ki jai. Nityal Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashtatara Shata Shishimar Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Goswami Maharaj ki jai. Nityal Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashtatara Shata Shishimar Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada ki jai. Nityalila Pravishta Maha-Bhagavat Shila Gorksharas Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Nityalila Pravishta Shila Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Ṭhākura ki jai. Nityalila Pravishta Vaishnav Sarvabhauma Shila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Shri Rupanu Gauriya Guru Varga ki jai. Shila Baladev Vijabhushan Prabhu ki jai. Shila Viśvanātha Cakravartī Ṭhākura ki jai. Shri Narottam Srinivas Shamananda Prabhu Trai ki jai. Shila Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami Par ki jai. Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jeev Gopal Bhatta Raghunath Shad Goswami Prabhu ki jai. Shri Sarup Damodar Rai Ramanandari Shri Gaur Parshad Vrinda ki jai. Namacharya Shila Haridas Thakur ki jai. प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासरी गौर भक्त वृंद की जाय. श्री क्षेत्र मंडल गौर मंडल व्रज मंडल मथुरा वृंदावन धाम की जाय. सर्व अभिष्ट विराट गिरिराज महाराज की जाय. श्री राधा कुंड श्याम कुंड की जाय. श्री मुन देवी गंगा देवी की जाय. श्री तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी की जाय. श्री भक्ति देवी की जाय. श्री पूर्णमासी योगो माया की जाय. श्री गोपेश्वर महादेव की जाय. श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जाय. ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय. श्री रस पंचाध्याय की जय. श्री सारार्थ-दर्शिनी वृत्ति की जय. श्री विश्वनाथ चक्रवर्ती ठाकुर की जय. रसेश्वरी श्री विश्वभानुनंदिनी श्रीमती राधा ठाकुरानी की जय. श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीगान की जय. अनंत अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय. समागत गौर भक्त वृंद की जय. श्री निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल. वृंदाय तुलसी देवाय प्रियाय केशवाय कृष्ण भक्ति प्रददेवी सत्यवताय नमो नमः. वंशा कल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः. Dandavat pranams everybody. Dandavat pranams Indira Mataji. Hari Bol. See you all tomorrow. Oh, and wait, tomorrow is going to be Srila Jiva Goswami's appearance day. It will be Vaman Dwadashi as well as Shravana Mahadwadashi for us here in Vrindavan. So maybe tomorrow also, maybe we should just read like one verse from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam and then we should read about Vaman Dev and Jiva Goswami. And maybe something on Rasalila. Anyways, we'll see. I'll prepare something, but yeah. All right. Yeah, because one day after the next. Tomorrow is, as I mentioned, tomorrow's Jiva Goswami's appearance day in Vaman Dwadashi. The next day will be Bhakti Vinod Thakur. The next day will be Haridas Thakur and Śrīla Bharati Maharaj. And the next day will be Vishwarup Mahotsav. So 4 big days in a row. So, but I don't want to break our Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam reading. So maybe we'll just read a little bit just to keep it going. And we'll also read about these special days. All right, Hari Bol.